everyone. Thanks for joining us today for another Pierbridge Parcel Insights webcast. This time we're joined by our valued partner, Labelmaster. Pierbridge and Labelmaster have been partners for a few years now, but Labelmaster has been in business for over 50 years. They're laser focused on dangerous goods. They're truly experts in the field. They provide products, consulting services, and technology for customers across multiple industries. And Labelmaster's DGIS software, one part of their offer, is integrated into Pierbridge's multi-care parcel management software, TransStream. Today, we're going to try and give you some answers to the question, do you have the right information for an efficient and safe shipping practice? My name is Scott Moore. I'm the VP of Marketing at Pierbridge and sometime game show host and interviewee, which I'm doing today. From Labelmaster, we have Mario Sagastumi, VP Software and Customer Success. Welcome to the webcast.
Thank you, Scott. Really glad to be here.
From Pierbridge, we have Bob Leva, who heads up our partner relationships. Bob is known around the office at Pierbridge as the Velvet Fog for his smooth radio voice. You'll learn why momentarily. Thanks for being a part of this, Bob.
Thanks for the compliment.
Just a couple of matters, housekeeping matters. Everyone will receive a copy of the presentation, a soft copy of the presentation, as well as a recording of the presentation once it's ready. So expect that in your inbox, perhaps as soon as early next week. And if you have any questions throughout the presentation, just use the GoToWebinar interface. There's an area there for questions. Just submit them. We'll monitor them. And with time permitting at the end, we'll answer as many as we can get through. But let's jump into it. The webcast today is one of 3 episodes that we hope will help you as a shipper create a roadmap to an optimized and compliant parcel shipping practice. Today's will focus on the right information. I mentioned that earlier. Key questions when considering dangerous goods handling and omni-channel fulfillment. The second episode, which will come in a month or so, will be on processes and workflows. And the last episode will be on scalability and automation. So all necessary steps in getting to a strong shipping practice. There's a lot of power in the combination of enterprise omni-channel shipping expertise that we at Pierbridge provide and hazmat knowledge, training, and compliance that's provided by our partner Labelmaster. When you get it right, the benefits are higher speed, more efficiency, means you can reduce your shipping costs, you can get quicker shipment throughput, and ultimately giving you maybe more capacity to handle expanding sales. You can avoid compliance risks and disappointing your customers. And really you can get to a place where you turn shipping from an expense to perhaps a competitive advantage or at least an investment that provides tangible benefits to your business, both in terms of an ROI, but also maybe in terms of customer satisfaction. Today's episode, again, is about the right information. Ideally, it's for those in gathering requirements in that phase of a project, or maybe you're addressing process gaps. We can hope to help you get to the carrier and product information you need for a successful shipping practice. But first, let's talk about some difficult shipping scenarios that you may all be facing. We've chosen to break things down into inside and outside the box. Next slide, please. Starting with what's in the box. Mario, what are some of those challenges that can trip up a shipper?
All right, Scott, I'll take what's inside the box for 500. The answer in terms of when we hear hazmat, Scott, or we hear dangerous goods, most folks envision hazmat suits and radioactive materials. And while that is true to some degree, the number of products that are considered dangerous goods is extensive. And it includes everyday mundane household items like paints, cleaning solutions, aerosols, and batteries. Scott, as shippers, we need to know exactly what's in the box, how much we're shipping, and how it's going to be transported, whether it's going to go via air, ground, or ocean, because different regulations apply to each one of those modes.
Mm-hmm. I was always amazed at how broad the list is. Are there any items that people don't normally think are dangerous goods, but in fact are?
The list is extensive. That's a great question. The list is extensive. Nail polish, for example, that's considered flammable. This is one that I just learned about recently. Milk is considered a marine pollutant. And of course, all of us carry, multiple mobile devices, and those contain lithium batteries, which are, considered DG in many, many instances.
Thanks. Bob, question for you. When it comes to parcel shipping, what types of order content can cause shippers problems and pitfalls?
Well, Scott, I'm going to take order details for 200.
Mm-hmm.
I think it is. I think it is the order details, and the details I speak of are capturing and recording data elements such as serial numbers in the case I'm shipping high-value goods, lot numbers when I'm dealing with shipping of food and/or drugs. Quantities is always a tough one. Does it relate to volumes such as ounces or gallons or barrels? These prove to be critical details that must be correct. And in addition to informational detail, of course, there are physical considerations that need to be understood. The contents I'm shipping, do they need to be temperature controlled? How much dry ice do I put in there to get it to the destination where it's still fresh? Is it oversized or an odd size or odd shaped item? Should that hockey stick that we see on screen, for example, should I just put a label on it, or does it need to go in a box? What's the best way? Well, it depends upon the carrier. Multi-item orders, what can be picked or packed with what? I certainly don't want to mix bowling balls and light bulbs. That would be terrible. I mean, even more terrible would be mixing flammables and matches. Does this shipment require a lift gate when it's going to be delivered? Will there need to be two drivers associated with delivery of this or getting it across the threshold? So you can see there's many opportunities for things to go wrong.
Thanks, Bob. And as a Canadian, I'm always happy when someone drops a little bit about hockey, so that's good.
Well, you put the hockey stick in the slide, I think.
I probably did, yeah. Good thing I didn't put a lacrosse stick in there, then we wouldn't have known what to talk about. So let's look at outside the box. Again, we'll start with you, Mario. From a DG perspective, what do shippers need to worry about on the outside of that box?
Okay, outside of the box, you need to have the proper UN packaging and labeling, the markings, as well as the dangerous goods declaration, known as the DGD. And those are documents and markings that tell the carrier what you are giving them, so that they know how to transport it.
Awesome, thank you. Bob, parcel pitfalls outside of the box?
Well, continuing along the documentation and declaration side of things, international has export paperwork, and the shipper needs to know when a shipment must be filed through the AES, automatic export system, to get the ITN number, the internal transfer number, that has to go on a label. So that needs to be communicated with the carrier to assure custom clearance. As we all know, shipments held up by customs for not dotting I's and crossing T's lead to lost customers and revenues. Making mistakes that result in canceled orders after the goods have made it halfway around the world are much more costly than orders that have only traveled halfway across the country. So also with post-shipment and accessorial fees, we need to make sure we have clean addresses. We need to understand what the dimensions of the box are, because my bill will be determined based upon that size potentially. So we want to eliminate these surprise costs that eat into our margins. So these are things that are happening outside the box. And if I'm running a multi-channel distribution where I'm shipping from stores and warehouses and the manufacturer, Does the team in those locations have the information and the processes that they need to get it out the door correctly? So tribal knowledge typically lives only in one location, and it can be challenging to share that tribal knowledge among the outlying points of distribution.
Correct me if I'm wrong, I think that's an issue with many DG shippers, right, Mario? Where the hazmat knowledge is usually centered around a couple of trained staff and not much broader in the organization.
That is absolutely right, Scott. I'm in full agreement that the warehouse needs this information to affect successful shipments. But it shouldn't be the only place where this information resides. If you look around the organization, you will see that your colleagues in supply chain, accounting, product management, and marketing are using a lot of the same information, the product descriptions, the dimensions, and what have you, throughout the life of that transaction. So it's really about where how we get to share that information and how we bring it together to affect successful shipments.
I think that's a great segue to our next topic. We can move to the next slide. What information do you need to make good shipping decisions? So we're going to start with the basics, and we'll move on to the next slide, please. Bob, can you take us through some of the decision-making information that a shipper needs for the outside of the box?
I certainly can address that, Scott. I think it really all starts with the customer's expectations. Do they want it as fast as possible? Is the shipping free? If the answer to both those questions is yes, most or all of my profit may be lost in this one sale if I don't select the right carrier and service. So it goes without saying that we need to know where it is going, and this, along with when it needs to be there, will impact the mode and the service that we select. We certainly wouldn't want someone in the warehouse making a shipping decision that contradicts the commitments already made to the customer. With the carrier service selection made, that would also dictate what needs to go on the label.
I'm sorry for the interruption, but Scott and Bob, while the customers' expectations are critical, I'm not diminishing them at all. We still need to know what's in the box and how it complies with the shipping requirements. Those elements need to be known. Don't promise to ship paints to Seattle via air from your warehouse in Miami. It just can't be done. But sorry, sorry for the interruption. I apologize.
That's a great point. You're 100% correct, Mario. Knowing what's in the carton is important. Oftentimes to get it on the label, particularly if we're shipping B2B. In the case of shipping to a retailer, the labeling requirements will vary from retailer to retailer, as well as the type of facility that we're shipping into for that retailer. And the label requirements as specified by the retailer significant to their receiving and put away processes and procedures. So we want to get those right.
Well, thanks, guys. So now that we understand what's in the box and what's on the box, let's look at who we call upon to get it to the customer, that order to the customer, on the next slide here. So once you get past that basic information, the next place to focus is on your carriers, who you want to and who you need to do business with. And in today's omni-channel shipping delivery environment, you do need a lot of carrier choice. I think it's pretty important. So what is that ideal carrier mix for your business? Most of us on the call probably know that e-commerce has been on a pretty extended rise over the last decade, both in terms of straight parcel volume, but also as a percentage of total retail sales and as a percentage of or just in straight dollar amounts increasing. This has kind of caused an explosion of carriers and carrier services in the space over the past 10 years. It's just steadily increasing. There's a lot more than just the big three. And in the past, when it was okay that you had maybe one of the major carriers and no others. You seem to be you would be okay. Now we're seeing with COVID, e-commerce has only increased exponentially. This has introduced another wrinkle that shippers need to address, which is capacity and a capacity crunch. And in fact, we've had a number of customers who are their volumes are being throttled back by their carriers, and they had to find alternative options. Another thing to consider is that carriers really are non-regulated. They're a little bit different than LTL, where there's almost a set standard. There's different processes, different data needs, and obviously compliance needs. And there's a lot of different variations carrier to carrier. So if you do end up with multiple carriers, you're likely to be using different systems, and you'll end up with data being siloed in a couple of different places, and that's not very good. So how will you manage them? And we're talking about carriers that are equipped with software or run off of technology. There are still a segment of that sector that are really not that technologically advanced. Bob, how can shippers solve some of these dilemmas?
Well, I think to help get one's arms around the mix of carriers and services, one needs to base that on their product, the delivery speed in which their product needs to be delivered, the distances they're going to travel, the regions of the country or the world they may be working in, volumes and costs. And as you suggest, Scott, it needs to be a mix. Global carriers are not always well suited for local deliveries. Their infrastructure is built to service the globe or a good portion of the globe. Likewise, regional carriers cannot support national distribution, but considering a collection of regional carriers could potentially support some national distribution supply chains. So the shipper needs to rely on good shipping software to handle carrier processes and being compliant with the carrier, but at the same time, allow it to have and operate with business rules and make it cost effective for the shipper to work well within their environment.
And Scott and Bob, I apologize again for the interruption. While I understand the concept of rapid growth of e-commerce and carriers and carrier options, but since we're talking about dangerous goods, let's agree to use the term more than explosion, okay? When I hear the term, my initial reactions are, where was it, and is everyone safe? Again, I apologize for the interruption. You were making a key point about having the right info and the right tools to manage the many services and information that are available from the carriers. Sorry about that.
No problem. We'll refrain from using that word.
Thank you.
Yeah. So once you have decided on that carrier mix, I think you probably need to start thinking about the carrier services that are available. So we'll go to the next slide. So the question here is, which carrier services do you need to consider? I think it's as critical as the carrier mix. It will determine, in a lot of cases, the delivery time, the cost, and it will help you meet your customer expectations. When it comes to services, it's good to know and understand what the services are, and more importantly, what they are not, what the limitations might be. These can really compound the complexities exponentially. Notice I didn't use explosion this time, Mario. When you are dealing with more than one carrier, it just keeps adding very large very quickly. So you can end up with a lot of complexity. Challenges here are threefold. You have factors around cost, delivery speed, i.e. same day, overnight, 2-day, etc., regional coverage, weight limitations, and so on. There also might be extra costs or surprises like commercial versus residential. These are accessorial fees that can be attributed to a shipment after it's already been sent out. DIM factors, Bob mentioned that earlier. These can vary sometimes by zone, for example. Allowed capacity. So we talked about that capacity crunch earlier. are you close to your monthly capacity or daily capacity? Lastly, where will that information live? A lot of cases, it's tribal knowledge. Sometimes it's system knowledge. A lot of places, a traffic manager dictates how items get shipped and with whom. They may not know hazmat compliance, for example. Shipping operations may not know all the carrier limitations for shipping hazmat. So ultimately, to get to that question, how is carrier service data maintained? The rules change all the time. Bob, what are some of the ways people can get around these service challenges?
Well, Scott, you really have my head spinning.
That was the point, yeah.
It's spinning. It's not exploding, Mario. It's only
Yeah.
spinning. We really need to attempt to manage and sort through this information. And the carriers have helped us. Historically, they've been very good at sharing and publishing their rates that we've negotiated and the rules on how they expect the shipper to do business with them. Prior to the age of automation, as I'll call it, it was printed and a very significant size guide of how to ship with carrier X. As technology has advanced, the carriers have began publishing APIs, and these APIs that they allow the shippers to access, so the shippers knows how to do business with the carrier electronically and systemically. So as we know, no two carriers are the same. Their rules and their rates vary, as do their APIs. So this creates a challenge for one trying to harness the power of multiple carrier APIs. So how do we normalize the data? Well, that's the question, and that's what we're trying to get to today, to understand all the data that's necessary to do just this, to normalize and take advantage of these carrier APIs. So if the data can be normalized, then we can leverage this information available from each carrier, as it's always current, and it's putting the responsibility of keeping the information current and up to date where it belongs, and that's in the hands of the carriers. So all these questions you raised, Scott, can now be answered by the carrier in a very timely and efficient manner. No more checking websites or going to carrier routing guides in this new age. Call the API from wherever you are in the process to get the answers that you're looking for.
Thanks, Bob. A lot of things to consider, and I would say we haven't even got to the most tricky part, dangerous, if you will, hazardous goods. Let's go to the next slide. And we'll just simply answer the question, how do you ship dangerous goods? And it's an obviously important question to have an answer for, because the repercussions can be serious. And we're not talking about explosions, but as Mario mentioned earlier, there are a lot of products that you may or may not think are actually hazardous, but are. So why don't we turn things over to you, Mario, and you can show us how, or take us through the shipping hazardous goods process, or those questions that you need.
Thanks, Scott. Thanks, Bob. I'll take dangerous goods for 500 billion in cryptocurrency, and then I got to figure out how to harness it. Similarly to Bob's guidance on managing the throng of carrier options, as a shipper, you need to know exactly what you are shipping so that you can render safe and compliant shipments to your carriers. There are myriad dangerous goods, including household items that we've mentioned before, like paint, nail polish, and lithium batteries. Each item needs to be classified, and there are 9 DG classifications. Among those classifications are explosives, flammable gases, corrosives, etc. And the DG regulations, like the carrier rates, change constantly. So when you look at the overall requirements, for DG shipments, they can be intimidating. They can be, and sometimes overwhelming. But if you break it down into manageable steps, including what information, what training, and what technology do we need, then you're well on your way to an efficient, repeatable, reliable, and compliant shipping practice. It's about, let's bring it all together, but it's one step at a time.
Thanks, Mario. Just a quick question on repercussions if they don't get this part of the shipment right.
Well, unfortunately, some of those repercussions will result in, a poor experience for the end customer. Delayed shipments and rejected shipments, which add costs to your processes. Fines and audits for shipping dangerous goods out of compliance, and more severe incidents, which I hope none of our customers and none of our listeners ever experience.
And in addition to that, Mario, sometimes carriers will suspend picking up packages from a carrier that's not being compliant and properly labeling and documenting the process. So, especially in time of carrier capacity crunch, you don't want to lose one of your carriers because you made a mistake.
That's an absolutely correct point, Bob.
Thanks, guys. I will sort of wind things down today, kind of figure out where things all fit together. If we can go on to the next couple of slides. The last question we'll address today is, how does all this information fit and flow? And I think both Bob and Mario have mentioned, it really all starts with the customer. Not only are they making an order, but they're setting an expectation. When they want to receive it, how they expect it to be packed, packaged, and labeled, and most importantly, how much they're willing to pay for that shipment or that the shipping part of the cost. That information is typically passed on to various fulfillment systems, whether it's an OMS, a WMS, an ERP, etc. This handles the accounting, the finance side of it, where the item is, getting it picked and packed, and adjusting the levels, the inventory levels appropriately. Then it's time to get the order shipped. It will come to a parcel TMS or a multi-carrier parcel management system like Transstream. This is another chance to get the order right. There's packing instructions that can happen here, or they can be provided earlier in the process. You can pick up the service level that dictate how quickly you want to ship it out. You can also ensure that you won't be charged post-shipment accessorial fees. It's when you have to address and adhere to dangerous goods compliance. And this is very easy to do when your dangerous goods software is embedded directly in the same application. All that shipping data then needs to get back into the OMS and ERP for customer service and accurate accounting. You'll also want to get some of this information back to the customer, either in push email communications or for pull tracking purposes. With a bit of plumbing, you can build all this information and make sure it's in the right systems and being shared across your entire fulfillment technology stack, if you will. So let's move on. What are the benefits of getting it right? This is sort of our closing a little bit here before we talk a little bit about the next step, the next episode, and we answer some questions. So we looked at how do you deal with difficult shipping scenarios. We're hoping that you'll feel a little bit more confident to execute all shipments flawlessly, order after order, no matter the who, what, and where of that scenario. We talked about what basic information you need to make good shipping decisions. Here we can realize that we have all the right information that's needed in the right place at the right time with the right system and resources for cost-effective, efficient, and compliant shipping. What is your ideal carrier mix? We talked about broadening the scope of your delivery choices to keep your customers happy at the lowest possible cost. Which carrier services do you need to consider? I think the benefit here is you get at almost real-time decision-making, allowing you to be successful in a dynamic, ever-changing environment. How do you ship dangerous goods? Here you'll know you're compliant, you know you're meeting your customer expectations, and you're doing it like every other shipment, efficiently and confidently. And when you put it all together, how this information fits and flows, you can realize an optimized and compliant shipping practice. Before we wrap, any last comments, Mario?
Sure. Thank you, Scott. So typically when we engage a customer to review their DG shipment, the DG shipping needs and practices, they typically bring in IT and they tell IT, hey, listen, this is what we need. Go build it. The IT will take on the project and create the screens and necessary workflows. Then the project lead finds out that they don't have all the data that they need, and the project stalls again. So without the right product information, it will be extremely difficult for any technology to succeed. So good and reliable product information is a solid place to start. And you're going to need the same information, a lot of the same information throughout the company for billing, for inventories, for procurement. So you have the majority of that information. Is how do we tweak it and how do we apply it so that you have a repeatable and reliable and compliant DG shipping practice. Thanks, Scott.
Great. Bob, any comments, final comments from you?
Yes, I'm often asked, Bob, when's it the best time to go ahead and pick a carrier and a service? And my answer typically is whenever you have sufficient information to do so. And historically, shipping systems have been, as you mentioned, sitting at the end of a conveyor, and the last chance you have to, in effect, an order going out the door and fix any mistakes associated with that order. But if you think about it from the perspective of making that decision early and or often, it's a matter of having the right information at the right place. So the shipping system should no longer be thought of as the last chance to fix a problem, but more or less the opportunity to confirm that what you thought was going to happen with an order indeed did. And then if there is an exception, you have an opportunity to deal with it. But I'd like to thank everyone for their time and thank Mario and Scott for having me on this presentation today.
Thanks, Bob, and thanks also to our audience. Stay tuned for our next episodes on this topic, training and workflows, as well as bringing it all together. And if you want to take some time, you can visit labelmaster.com and check out some of the information there. They might have some more focused responses on dangerous goods, and of course, the Pierbridge's resources section is a good source of information for a lot of shipping questions that you may have. I don't see any questions in the question box, which is either good or bad, depends how you want to look at it. But we didn't prepare any, sneak a few seed questions in. So I think with that we can just wrap for the day. Thanks everyone, Mario, Bob, and the rest of the team on both the Pierbridge side and the Labelmaster side for the help in putting this together. Really appreciate it, and especially to our audience for taking the time out of their day. We'll look forward to speaking with everybody in the near future. Thank you very much. Have a great day.